Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, up the long ladder. Yeah, it's got an Irish thing. It's got one of the most beautiful women in Trek history. I said it. I don't think I said it in the episode, but I'm saying it right now. Up the long ladder. Yeah, that's not the only thing we talk about here. This weekend, the mothership. It's All Been Done Radio Hour. Yeah, it's got a Halloween bend. I don't think Halloween's Irish, but it's a lot of fun. Go check out the show. Check it out online. We're online. We're still there, just like we were still there. Check it out. It's All Been Done Radio Hour.
You can check out itsallbeendoneradiohour.com or the It's All Been Done Radio Hour Facebook page to get tickets to the show. Or become a Patreon donor and you'll get the show link sent to you.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, you couldn't have said it better myself. And in fact, I literally could not have said it better myself. But I do say things a lot better myself. And this episode, up the long ladder, on this episode of It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
Jimmy-Jerome. And we're here to talk about Up the Long Ladder, first impressions.
Well, I'll have to think about that for a moment. But once I gather my thoughts, I think I can say that, and I'm also just guessing and maybe putting some words in Steven's mouth as well. But I think that we both thought that this was a crazy episode.
It was.
Would you say it was crazy even for sci-fi?
Yes.
Yeah, or perhaps even especially for sci-fi.
Yeah.
Sorry, Keith, I stole your point.
Sorry, we just talked about this. But yeah.
When you try to mix in rustic elements, I think especially in Star Trek, and this is probably very true of the original series as well, they have a tendency to go a little too far, I think, with incorporating those elements and to the point where it doesn't quite fit or make sense. It was fun. I laughed a lot in certain places. So
I laughed intentionally and unintentionally a lot, actually. And this episode's bonkers. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Sorry.
I was just asking what didn't make sense to Keith.
Oh, well.
But maybe that's something we should wait to get into. Right?
Yeah. This episode is bonkers, but that said, I didn't hate it. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. But it is bonkers now I'm just doing Dana Carvey as Regis Philbin. But I was telling Keith right before we started, I at least once or twice, like Colleen, was like, are you watching this? This is insane.
I mean, I'll admit that parts of it were a little eccentric, to say the least. But I dug the heck out of the storyline with the Irish people. I really liked it a lot.
And this probably speaks for me for the episode. Parts of it I was super entertained and delighted with, and other parts I was like, yeah. Let me say this: these are the most notes I've ever taken for an episode.
Really?
And part of that might be this might be the most I've had to drink before watching an episode too. So that might be part of it too. But I've been probably angrier or whatever, more annoyed watching an episode, but not more like, what is going on here? Which isn't a bad thing for an episode. Isn't a bad thing for a TV show to be like, I got to keep watching where this is going because this is crazy.
I mean, I didn't think it was unrealistic or unbelievable that there was this colony that was trying to live the simple life and then was a bit backwards for even by today's standards. I was fine with all that.
No, I mean, it's
look around now at the people that want to simplify life and go out to the woods and whatever.
And to that point, Jimmy, I think that's might be one of the reasons I didn't hate the episode is I found both, we've had a lot of dual planet things where it's two planets and they hate each other and all that stuff or whatever. And this one was like, these two people kind of came from the same place or whatever. But I thought both storylines were interesting in completely different ways. And so, like I said, I didn't hate, by no means I hate this episode. I was in there the whole time.
So the clone storyline, I felt a lot like the unnatural selection scientists. Like, what the heck are they doing? I don't like them. I don't like what they're doing. I'm checked out.
So a couple of words of preamble here. Well, first of all, to the point about it being to it being relatively realistic, I agree. I mean, we've certainly seen crazier things, and as far as the realm of actual physical possibility. However, it just seemed funny, just the mixture of things, like having straw come up on the ship and things like that with the animals.
Well, and it's very much this week's the Nazi planet. We're going back to you. It's the Nazi planet and the Romans planet and the Germans planet and all that stuff. All right, sorry, the gangster planet. I'm just saying Nazis over and over. But, but yeah, and I think, Jimmy, the Irish storyline or whatever, for lack of a better term, I still think it's fascinating, and for a number of good reasons. But I think the music was so terrible.
I love the music.
The music was so terrible that I was just like, no.
That's where it went to the TOS zone right there, where they hit the fiddle. Yes. Where there's what are we? Okay, that's what made it feel like this is bonkers now.
And that's it. Just to throw in with that note, because I think it's related. At some point, Colleen looked up and said, "Is that Scotty?" I was like, "Well,
might as well be."
Yeah, you're not completely off. But yeah.
So maybe it's just I like Irish culture and Irish folk, whatever. But I was completely enthralled and taken in by them. I liked the music, and you're right, it was TOS-y, but I liked it, and I was totally on board for that story. Had we never done the clone thing and it stayed on their story, I'd be arguing for this to get near the top of the season. I liked it that much. I was totally charmed and totally on board for it.
See, all right, I want to make it clear, first of all, that it's not like I didn't like it. I was entertained. I wasn't like, oh God, this is so stupid. It was just that there was just something about it that was, I mean, Picard himself said absurd. He used the word absurd later, and yes, you kind of feel that.
Yeah, I think what he said was bow to the absurd.
Yes,
that's what I wrote down.
Call it delightfully absurd.
Right. Yes, that is fair. The preamble I was going to mention before, first of all, about the note taking thing. I've finally started taking to just watching these on my computer anyway. I just have the screens up and I can just type some notes in directly, which helps me take more notes than I might have ordinarily anyway. The other thing is that I think I enjoyed this episode even more because of Steven dropping the hint a couple of days ago about you as you're watching this episode and talking about how you're feeling. And then also Jimmy weighing in later saying similar things and then indicating there's like a halfway point where things started going off the rails for you. So I was like, what is going to happen now?
Well, and I think that's and like I think I alluded to earlier, I think that's what makes this episode more interesting than a lot of dual storyline episodes we've had, where it's like, that's weird, but I don't care about either one. And I know, Jimmy, you didn't care for the clones, and we'll get into that, but I have many issues with the clone storyline. But yeah, sorry, Keith, I jumped in there on your point, but yeah, I think that's what kept this interesting. I'm curious. We'll see on this journey where we end up at the end when we rank them, but yeah. But I think there's definitely a TOS cheesiness to it, and I think that's where I started. Jimmy was, oh God, this is the Irish episode or whatever. But I feel like it went beyond that. I thought it was
that could have been a lot worse.
And I think, and maybe the fact for me that I was laughing and I leaned into like, okay, this is kind of amusing, as opposed to the gangster episode when we went back was a fun episode of TOS as well. But the other ones, not so much. Bread and Circuses and some of those other ones, not so much. But anyway, we've gone deep into our this just shows how this episode gets you, because we're just on our opening feelings, and we've gone deep.
Yeah.
So there was a subplot here at the beginning of the episode that they wrapped up 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
It was very brief, which I thought was odd, where Worf faints and then has basically Klingon measles, and Pulaski covers for him, which was the one thing that bothered me about that was she tells him it's the measles, and then he leaves without ever getting any type of treatment. And I'm like, are you going to treat him? Or are you just going to send him away? But then the Klingon tea ceremony, and her being so excited about it, and then taking the antidote so she could enjoy it with him. I was so disappointed that story stopped there a few minutes in the episode. I wanted more of that.
I'll tell you what I was disappointed by. I looked up Klingon tea ceremony on Urban Dictionary, and there was nothing. Nothing there. I was sure that was an Urban Dictionary term.
Well, I think you need to correct that then.
Good idea. I'm on it. But yeah, that very first scene, and he's growling. I'm like, what is this? Klingons in London? Or a Starfleet Klingon in London? What is going on here? And then you're like, I wrote down Klingons do not faint, which is akin to Woozley's do not say no to a drink. It's one of those things that, they hold up. But it is weird because I didn't even think about that till you just said it, Jimmy, that we have that little thing and then it's like gone.
And I will say the one thing that occurs to me now that did not occur to me while watching it, because I just loved that. Like I said, I love the first half of this episode. I really, like, I'll put it up there with one of my favorite episodes of Next Gen. But what didn't occur to me then was we just saw Pulaski be disturbed by Klingon culture a couple weeks ago when Worf went through the pain sticks. So it doesn't quite gel to me that she's all knowledgeable and excited about Klingon culture. Unless it turns out she really liked the pain sticks and decided to look more into things. I don't know.
Maybe it was when all the talking she did to Starbase Research about it. I didn't know Starbase Research was a place or a thing. What is Starbase Research?
It's
is it a website?
Where you research on a starbase. Duh.
But it has to be on Starbase 515.
Ask a silly question. Yeah.
It's actually 511 through 575 are all research starbases.
Which is why they started with 5-1. Yeah.
They say they're utopians or whatever. Isn't that what the deal?
Well, he characterized them as utopians because of the possibility that they were. I don't know if that's like an official term so much as it. What was it? I didn't know that, and I didn't understand why it was like, well, utopians. They were not interested in technology. That doesn't make sense to me. Because utopia is just a perfect society, right? So, I mean...
It's a perfect society, but, different people have different ideas of how you get to that.
Right.
Well, right. And I felt like Picard, I think it was Picard saying it, I felt like he was like, well, utopia wouldn't involve technology. I'm like, well, Brave New World was utopia, quote unquote.
Well,
and that was all technology. Well, that's in their mind. Yeah, is utopia dystopia? That's a different conversation.
Well, maybe that does imply that there was some sort of movement that he's referring to
get back to basics.
Yeah, there's a lot of future history in this episode, which I really appreciate.
Yes, I put Terran ! That's one of the first things that Picard said. I actually used the word Terran, which is fun.
Yeah, some alien species refer to Earth's Earthlings, humans, as Terrans.
Right. So, yeah, well, I mean, we saw that in Guardians of the Galaxy, and I can't remember if maybe we already noted this in Star Trek as well, but it just, I like when that sort of thing comes up.
Yeah.
Were they the Mariposans? Is that what it was? Is that what they said?
Yeah, well, I think that was the name of the ship.
The Mariposa was the ship.
Yeah.
Because then they're like, it's Butterfly. I'm like, okay. Right. And maybe that matters with the rest of the episode, and I'm not making that connection yet. It just made me think of Weezer, and it's the last song on Pinkerton.
Well, Picard told you that didn't matter, so.
Oh, that's So maybe I'm wrong on this, but didn't they say they were worried they'd be shocked if they came on the Enterprise? Didn't somebody say that?
Troy said that.
Yeah,
she brought up that point, and then that gave the reason for Riker to go down to the surface first. They
came in a spaceship, though, right?
Well, their ancestors might have.
Yeah, that was 200 and some years ago. Nobody alive now.
So
was part of that.
They've never been on a spaceship. Okay.
Yeah. So my only issue with that first half of the episode was, first of all, it didn't seem like it mattered that Riker would go down and alone with no security guard again. And then all the hay all over the transporter pad.
Yeah.
I feel like you would have just beamed them to the cargo hold, and Riker would have made sure he had that discussion. He wouldn't just let them do it and be amused by it.
Yeah. It seemed like, that came out in the discussion because I actually wrote that note. Why would he do that? And then immediately after, because he says to, I think that was kind of a passive-aggressive move on his part as far as him trying to explain to Picard what was going on. He said, I don't care, just do it. Mm-hmm. So obviously the way to resolve the discussion was to agree to bring up their animals and other stuff because they would have said, we need all these things to come with us. It was like, okay, fine, let's go.
Yeah, but still, first, I don't understand why the hay was all over the pad.
Well, that's probably part of it. I mean,
it should have just been the circles where they were standing, right?
That wasn't hay. That was a life form. They were life forms. So they picked up on life forms.
They should have used the cargo transporter anyway and beamed them straight to the shuttle bay. That would have made more sense.
I know that it was cargo hold number 7, which at first I was like, 7 cargo holds, but that makes sense that there'd be that many cargo holds.
It's a big ship.
Big ship, yeah.
Well, it's funny you should say that about the transporter circles. I think we've talked about that before. Like, what it seems like unclear why they need them in some cases, except to accelerate or amplify the effect of the transporter to some extent. But if you're bringing, you could have beamed them anywhere onto the ship, especially if they were kind of there as a cluster with the animals and everything at once. So I think it just happened to be all group transport.
I was going to ask Steven, have you noticed that all of a sudden they're now beaming up to places other than the transporter room? They're doing lots of beam to the bridge or to engineering or just cargo bay, which is new. I don't know that they mentioned it before season 2 of Next Gen.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
I didn't. I would have sworn they could do that before.
Certainly not in the original. And I don't think so. They did it in the first season of Next Gen. I think it was
people would
they just kind of
pop up on the bridge, but it wasn't intentionally done.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it took note.
If you notice that's very interesting.
So Riker and Brenna, oh my God, I love them so much. Riker, her first line to Riker was, "You look at something about you've never seen a woman before," and Riker's response, "I thought I had."
Loved it.
Fantastic. And then
he's not wrong.
Only enhanced by Picard laughing at them.
Yeah, that just turning and going, he's like, "I give up," essentially. Just like, let's.
I mean, why not? They were delightful people, but it's not like they were causing him any trouble, really.
Right.
I mean, so they started a fire or whatever, but these were like very minor things. They weren't causing like serious issue to the ship.
Yeah, there's certainly
the original series where they would have been a problem that had to be dealt with.
Right.
And they'd have tried to take over the ship or something at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
And nothing like that ever came. And maybe that's why it delighted me so much more than an original series episode in the same vein.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's why they're more fun. And although I will say I did write Picard and Farmer's Daughter is less than Newman and Farmer's Daughter, but that's the Seinfeld part of the episode. But
I like that Worf noticed her and said she was like a Klingon woman.
She is amazing.
Brenna? Oh,
yes.
Just Brenna Odell, played by Rosalind Landor.
Yeah.
Who is best known for the movie The Devil Rides Out, The Amazing Mr. Blunden, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes from the 80s. None of those, I don't know that I've seen her in all this. She did a bunch of voice work for the Kingdom Hearts series, playing the Blue Fairy.
I expected to see a lot more credits for her because I was like, what else can I watch with her in it? Because I'm ready to go.
She was also a voice actress in Tasmania. This is her only Star Trek credit, though.
Interesting. I guess they got this season. They were dipping into a lot of voice actor talent. Then apparently,
I mean, she wasn't a voice actress until after this.
Oh, that's even stranger.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree with Steven. First of all, she is British, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
Yeah, even though she had the Irish accent. But I agree with Steven. I think she should have gotten more work. I liked her so much in this.
She's so good.
And her father, Barry Ingham, played Danilo Odell. He is more of a famous face. You may recognize his voice as the voice of the great mouse detective, Basil of Baker Street.
Huh.
Oh,
he
wow.
was also in Doctor Who and the Daleks, and he's got a lot more credits than she does.
You probably would have gotten Marianne to watch this if you told her that. But
I didn't know ahead of time. I looked after the fact, unfortunately. And he had already done The Great Mouse Detective before he did this role. That would have been a few years earlier.
All right, so the father, what was his name?
Danilo?
Okay. Yeah, now, he was just, he could have been so, I mean, he was over the top, and I just laughed at everything he did. It was just so, I surprised myself by, how much I was laughing at just this. He did for the alcohol scene. First of all, it was interesting that he and Worf were talking about how the replicators worked for alcohol. The idea
they talked about O'Brien offering them synthol, which O'Brien doesn't drink synthol. He must have just been responsible because he didn't want to get in trouble for getting them drunk.
Right. I don't know if we'd heard. Have we heard of synthahol before that? Is it something that's
I'm not sure we have, but it's certainly something that comes up after this as well.
So it's supposed to be non-alcoholic, essentially.
No. So the thing with synthol. And that's what they mainly drink, at least if you're a senior officer on the Enterprise D, is that it can get you drunk, but the second you decide you don't want to be drunk anymore, it just wears off.
Yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Alcohol.
The replicator brings them some whiskey, and he's like, well, this is stupid, or this is awful because it doesn't have a bite, which is interesting to me because maybe it's just they were just defaulting to some really high shelf, smooth whiskey.
Well, we also talked about how the replicators frequently don't give them satisfactory food.
Huh. All right. Well, there's that too.
Keith, that goes back to what they mentioned later about the clones. It's a copy of a copy of a copy of whiskey. So it's just not that good of whiskey.
Could be. So.
And it's not Irish whiskey.
One of the things that I think that really made me laugh, that I was like, why I can't believe this. Just his take after he drank that Klingon brew.
Yeah.
Just he did the full on Don Knotts cross-eyed. I cracked up. Just
Well, and I think if their storyline was dealt with any differently, you'd be like, "Oh, this is stupid, gross." But it wasn't. It was funny. Those guys were funny.
They clearly had fun with it. They went with it, and yeah.
One thing I thought you would notice, Keith, and it certainly stuck out to me, is the father, the Irish guy. He put his hand in the replicator before it was done materializing.
Yes.
I wasn't sure. I wondered what would happen if he had actually touched it before it finished materializing. Because I don't know. I don't think we've ever seen that.
He came so close to doing it, but didn't quite. Right? And I was like, oh. Didn't write that down, but yes, I did notice that.
Yeah, that to me stuck out as a thing Keith would notice. That, and the other thing was they revealed the ship is self-cleaning in this episode.
Huh, yeah. Oh. How would that even work exactly? Like
Roombas.
Yeah, maybe
that's what I was going to say.
Like the Star Wars mouse droids or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think it's a droid. Actually, in Star Trek Discovery, we do see a robot that takes care of the ship and stuff when the people aren't around.
Oh,
and cleaning and things. And that was, of course, in the canon well before the next gen. So they probably. I think Discovery. This was one of the short treks. Sorry, it wasn't Discovery proper, but still, it was on the Discovery. And I think some of these writers on the new stuff search for just that random line from the old stuff and want to explain it and explore it. And that to me is that.
I just noticed there's a lot of great vocabulary in this episode. There's the Terran, and also they use the word hegemony, which I'd never heard out loud before. I remember it from the Ender's Game series. I was always pronouncing it differently in my head.
I always said hegemony.
Yeah. I don't know. Is that an actual historical period that he's talking about, the European hegemony?
I no, that was in the future. That's future history. They talked about that being kind of the first attempt at one world government, and it was in the after World War III, so it hadn't happened yet.
Which oddly enough, this actually sounds a lot like what they did in the Ender series, which I don't know if there's a reference to it or not. But
if you guys want a live update on the Klingon tea ceremony in the Urban Dictionary, my brother has responded that it's also known as up the long ladder or drinking the courage juice. So the Klingon tea ceremony is the ability to participate in something that scares the S out of you with friends. So that's the first answer I've got for you.
Nice. So the next word was deleterious, which I never hear enough. Worf said that about the alcohol. Said we actually have the full deleterious effects.
Which I also thought was delete. I can't even say it the way I thought it was said.
that one I actually had heard more often.
Yeah.
The last note I had about this first half of the episode was washing her feet is the way Brenna comes on to Riker, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, I'm not a foot guy by any means, but I liked how simple it was and how it was obvious enough without being over the top obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I just dug her whole vibe.
She was
feature later this episode.
Yes, she was. So yeah. What do you want me to wash? I'm there. I'll bring the cleaning supplies.
Absolutely.
I thought you were about to say chef's kiss there at some point.
As much as I derided the music earlier, the how terrible it was, there are also some TOS musical flourishes, as if to say, by the way, if you hadn't noticed yet, we're kind of doing a TOS thing here. And I don't even mean like the Irish music or whatever. It was just more of just hints at some of the old theme, not even the main theme, but just some of the themes we can remember that we would recognize from the old show.
Well, I don't remember exactly how it sounds in my head right now, but I did note on my Facebook post about that just right from the very start, as they're just flying through space, they had that weird little theme going on. It was just like something mysterious is going on. Mm-hmm. This is leading up to Worf growling, so I thought maybe he was sensing something that was about to happen, but no.
I didn't know if he was going to throw up or what he was going to do at first, but Klingon measles, they do weird things to people. Actually, that should be an Urban Dictionary term as well.
That was kind of fun, just the idea of, well, first of all, comparing it to something that we could understand in that way, measles, or just, even if chickenpox or something, I'm surprised I didn't go with that. But his question, how would Commander Riker deal with, the idea of getting measles? And just, first of all, it was fun that he respected Commander Riker in that way and brought him up as an example. and Pulaski's response of just treating it like, yeah, that's not manly. As if, yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this, but they eradicated Klingon measles at one point, and then there's a whole anti-vaccine movement. And yeah, so it made a big comeback.
Too close to reality.
Yeah.
Too close. As we record this quarantine from COVID-19.
Yes.
Even though our states are reopened, we are still following distancing guidelines and staying home.
Yes.
So moving on to the second half of this episode. The first thing I noticed, and I thought this was really cool, was as the Enterprise circled the planet where the clone people lived, you could see the shadow of the Enterprise on the rings of the planet. In a couple different shots. The first shot, but then it happened again later as well.
I like that Deanna urged caution, and I wrote, I knew that they should be cautious, and I'm only 1/16 Beta Z.
Do you have a little Beta Z in you?
I do.
Would you like some?
Wow.
That was the obvious. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just. My wow was then picturing Deanna using that line at some point.
Oh yeah, I don't think she would. Maybe her dad. So as they beam down, this is a rare instance of people being like extra competent at their job. Pulaski's already scanning them before they even go into the meeting. I loved that. I noticed it right away, and I'm like, yeah, why don't they do that more often? That's what you should be doing.
Yeah, I wrote Pulaski's sly way of figuring it out. Because I knew something was up, but I was just like, all right, Pulaski's on this. And like I said, I've come full circle on Pulaski. I love her now. I'm going to miss her when she's gone, although Crusher, well, I know, will soften the blow.
When she's gone. Yeah, if it wasn't for Crusher coming back, I might be depressed for the next 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Because Pulaski is second only to Crusher, and Crusher, half of her appeal is how she relates to Picard, which obviously Pulaski can't do. But man, yeah, doing the scanning, and I did like the aspect of the story that they didn't keep us guessing. Pulaski announces it 30 seconds later, yeah, you're all clones. Good, there's no mystery. Let's move on.
My note on that was that they cloned the word clones. It was like, clones? Clones?
Yeah.
Clones. Oh, clones.
So
that's weird. I'm barely exaggerating that scene.
And this is my whole thrust with this whole part of the episode. Why is clones a bad word? I know at that time clones was a bad word, and maybe is clones still a bad word?
Yeah.
When you say bad word, I mean,
I feel like because they immediately were like clones. Oh, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote that. Is this a Star Wars thing?
Well, the moral implications of cloning.
Right.
Yeah, there is that, but I don't know if that's...
And also Star Wars just ruined clones for everybody because they did so poorly.
Right. So my question would be: Are there any official regulations about that at this point in history?
Right, and that's my thing. Is like I feel like.
Well, we know with Noonien and Singh and the genetic engineering that was bad, but these guys come from past that point of time.
Right. Okay. I have a lot of issues with the way they deal with this.
Same here, but well, first of all, the way that Pulaski asked the question about how they dealt with I can't remember the exact term that she was using, but there was obviously something to the science of what they were doing that she was familiar with. Mm-hmm. So it didn't seem like she was necessarily shocked. She was just, or at least not shocked in the sense of like, this is disgusting, more as like, how are you making this work and still surviving? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like somebody actually says a copy of a copy or something to that extent.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and which I think is interesting. And I mean, there are ethical issues with clones, but I think it's unfair of them to be like, oh, you've been doing this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, they're pretty much like, what did you want us to do?
Yeah, they had no choice. I mean, when you're talking about how each clone degrades in copy, all I can think of is multiplicity.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great example.
But here's the thing about all this. It didn't quite make sense to me as far as what they were trying to do with the idea of it making like this is for their survival, as if this is something that ordinary people would think to do to survive. I mean, it's a biblical reference, isn't it? What do you mean? You had Adam and Eve, and now there's 7 billion of us. At some point, oh God, they weren't clones, but people were involved with people that they shouldn't be involved with. Yeah, I mean, that does sort of poke holes in certain things, doesn't it? But that's neither here nor there at the moment.
Though, to that end, I did, and this is the perv part of the podcast. I don't they essentially say they lost their mojo for each other or whatever at some point. Mm-hmm. Those quadruplet girls, no. How does that?
I mean, they're no Brenna Odell.
That's fair. Oh, that's for sure.
Riker doesn't want cloned. He says that outright, and I just wrote, "Oops, too late." But you'll get that in another season or two.
Here was my thing: is I felt like Riker was like, "Why wouldn't be a sperm donor?" I didn't see the distinction for me.
Well, yeah, that's where I was going with this. Part of it. First of all, it didn't make any sense to me that the people on that planet felt the way they did as far as survival was so crucial in the sense of we need to clone ourselves just to keep going for what? Secondly, I mean, it's not like individual survival or even the survival of the race. I mean, what are they going to do?
Right.
Secondly,
well, you need the younger generation to pay into Social Security, so the older generation can.
It's never going to be there for.
The inherent disgust. I thought I thought Riker was very Kirk in this episode. The way he was trying to express things, the seduction bits, and just Picard and Pulaski just silently shook their heads to agree. No, we wouldn't feel that. We would feel the same way essentially. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that disgust. It seemed so strange as far as like everybody in the ship is going to feel that way. He just assumed. Yeah. All humans are going to.
That turned me off a lot, and I did write that Riker had a follow-up question. Can I just have sex with them and impregnate them that way? Then he might have been in, because that's where Kirk would have gone right away. It's like, hey, when do we get started?
But he'd have to impregnate a lot to do some genetic.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that's even better.
Yeah. No, I mean they did it.
Certainly, what Danilo Odell thought at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
I have comments on that too.
They did a good job of explaining why it wouldn't work for their situation on the planet, for not having enough people there, blah, blah, blah. They also pointed out that I thought it was kind of the interesting facet of that is that the prime minister indicated how repugnant, that was the word he used, repugnant the idea of physical, intercourse and just that method of reproduction had become to them. They'd sort of socially bred the idea out of themselves.
Well, and I guess to that extent,
I didn't buy that. I don't buy being able to drive a genetic drive out of yourself. That didn't make sense to me. And also the fact that there were 5 of them, really, and they were just going to all have 3 children by 3 different men, and that was going to solve it. That also seemed like that made no sense whatsoever.
No, I think they meant including just everybody in the colony that came down as well.
I understand.
It was probably good. It was certainly more than 5 of the Irish colony thing that was happening.
Sure, but because the Irish are going to end up breeding with all the clones, that's not going to get a huge amount of genetic diversity.
No, they're breeding with each other as well, though, and I think their progeny are really going to be.
So they need to make enough kids with each other for the clones to have people to make kids with later.
Right.
I don't know.
Essentially,
it just seemed kind of weak sauce to me.
It was
that and nobody okay, we need more genetic material. We're not going to give it to you. Nobody ever thought they're going to try to kidnap us if we beam down, especially after last week in the Packleds. Like, come on, people.
Okay, I've got
down unarmed and all unprepared.
Jamie, I've got to read you my note on this one. Okay. So I'm writing. I'm pleasantly surprised that ... laugh out loud. Before I even finished typing this, they moved to the kidnapping. Because it seemed like the discussion seemed like it was like, oh, it's civil. It was like, well, you refuse. Okay, that's fine. They're getting ready to leave and just like zap. I was like, oh, all right.
Oh, immediately. I mean, so that to me, I'm like, remember the Packleds last week? And then same thing with immediately Geordi's like, well, my visor's a lie detector. But then I feel somebody on set said, yeah, but last week you couldn't tell the Packleds were lying. So he quickly added the end, but it doesn't always work on aliens. And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, no. He said that? I missed it.
Yeah, he said my visor acts as a lie detector, but it doesn't always work so well on aliens.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. what's the difference between someone from the Enterprise impregnating the clones and the Irish people impregnating them?
Nothing. See, there's a thing.
Exactly. That's my problem. So they're like, oh, we don't want to do it. We're cool with running a friggin' puppy mill. That I have a huge problem with. I do not care for that.
Yeah.
That I have a huge problem with. It's convenient and it's a logical solution and it makes sense in some ways, but I'm just not happy with Riker and Pulaski on that. I'm just like, no, you guys are not good people.
So
I just don't like it. And I know, and we can get into the cloning thing, but I also feel like and this actually cuts both ways for both groups of people. I feel like they're making decisions for the clones, like, well, you're going to mate. And there's a consent issue there, a clone or not. And then the other way, we've got all these men deciding that women are going to have babies by 3 different men just so we can keep these races going. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, Brenna even brought that up, and they were. What? Brenna brought that up, and they just kind of shrugged it off. It's like, well, okay, I guess I'll do it. He's rich.
Here's how they got. Yeah, exactly. They got around with like, well, it's going to be worth your while. Oh, I can marry into money. Okay, yeah, let's do this. It's like, what? And I think I would have reacted that way when it came out in 89 or 90, 89, whenever it was premiere. But yeah, especially now.
Well, you can tell in America with this episode.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And they're like, well, you can't keep going this way much longer. Maybe 15 generations. Isn't 15 generations like 225 years?
15. They said 2 to 3 generations.
Oh.
She said the word 15 at some point.
Oh,
yeah.
I did.
But without any infusion of genetic material. The clones as they are were only going to last 2 or 3 generations, which I really bumped on because they didn't seem sick or degraded at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't know how old.
Just dealing with the best of the best clones that run the planet, because they mentioned that there were multiple cities, so there must be. Like,
I didn't even catch that. I hadn't thought about like how many people there were.
Well,
and I guess, and there's only 200 of these Irish people or so that doesn't make. Again, you're going to have issues with breeding and stuff.
At some point, none of these guys read or saw Blade Runner, read Do Android Dream of Electric Sheep. But I mean, we're constantly talking about whether they're sentient beings or not, and these guys are like, no, they're not, and we're not mating with them either. And I just, as smart and intellectual as TNG is and whatever Star Trek is in general, I just feel like in this episode, and we've talked about this in a lot of these episodes, it's like all the don't do drugs. A lot of them are very much of their time, and just like the 60s episodes were. But yeah, I'm just like, I just hard stop. I just, like I said, and to that point, that doesn't make that storyline uninteresting. It just makes me think less of Riker and Pulaski and just the whole idea. So
just the Pulaski thing. This is we're still back on the thing about Riker and Pulaski going, oh, this is why would you do this? This would never work. Her objections. She essentially said that since we right now, us wouldn't be enough, like the 3 of us wouldn't be enough to make you last more than a few generations, or I still think she said 15, but that's not important to the point. Wouldn't it make more sense to then maybe contact Starfleet and see if there would be some sort of genetic bank or something they could use, or
just send other colonists out there?
Yes. Any number of other solutions other than say, screw you guys, we're leaving.
You tell me there's not an intergalactic sperm bank? I mean, come on.
Right. I mean, why would that be so unethical?
Yeah.
In that sense, why is it's maybe even helping them to do something other than cloning in that sense, give another viable solution, which they ended up doing, but which was probably a lot more, as you said, convenient and haphazard when it came down to it.
Oh, it felt
than
way too
doing
neat.
something more.
That ending felt way too neat.
Yeah,
especially as we keep saying, there are too few people to even make that really a much more viable long-term option.
And everyone would have wanted to mate with the farmer's daughter, so it would have created a lot of conflict.
Brenna's gonna bear forget 3. She's gonna bear 12 children by 12 different.
And she's gonna be compensated, and she should be.
Oh my God!
But I also think she's only going to mate with the guy she wants to mate with. So
I think you're right. She's going to tell the
certainly.
Sorry, this bank's closed. Yep.
But
as she should.
And just the comical idea of her even noting coin, is if it's hard to imagine that few people from what they were beaming up to even have to worry about a monetary system of that sort, and then also going to a much more futuristic society. Which were they using money? The clones? I mean, what were they even?
Right.
I mean, but
there's a lot of other stuff at play here.
Yeah, they traded in stem cells.
So help me out. We're gonna go to Prime Directive class with Jimmy-Jerome here. They were gonna be shocked to come aboard this starship, but I feel like wasn't there a lot of Prime Directive issues in this whole thing then, or no?
No, there's no Prime Directive issues in this episode.
Because they arrived on a ship as a colony?
Because Prime Directive only applies to species that have not found warp drive. These were all humans from Earth.
Oh.
That's quite nice. The technicality, but I understand what you're saying.
I mean, you could argue they left Earth. Well, actually, we know from Star Trek history, Ephraim Cochrane's warp drive experiment was before this. So warp drive was already invented on Earth before they left. And you would need warp drive to travel between stars. So
they left in 2123.
Capable starship. Yeah, they definitely came in a warp-capable starship. So Prime Directive doesn't apply.
So then they shouldn't have been shocked. I feel like...
Again, but it had been a couple hundred years since they came on that starship, so nobody living had been on the starship. But because you would think that they'd heard stories or whatever.
Technically, it's okay, but...
I mean, I definitely think the clones just dropped them off and kept going. So here's the thing I want to really blow your mind with, though. This episode was written by Melinda M. Snodgrass. Mm-hmm. She wrote one other episode we've watched so far, The Measure of a Man. I don't understand how somebody that wrote such a nuanced, well-developed script also wrote this. She has two more episodes that she wrote coming up, The Ensigns of Command and The High Ground. I don't recall either one of those by their titles. So
She's got range.
I mean, no.
What?
Yeah.
That makes it even more disturbing the way she talked about clones. Because that whole data episode is, like you said, it's a nuanced thing about what makes a sentient being and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
The other glaring issue I had with this episode is how Pulaski and Riker didn't notice there was any time lapse at all.
Oh. Well, I can I can attest to how that feels, actually, when you have a little bit of a missing gap in a night.
But they didn't have a missing gap. They didn't think anything was wrong.
No, that's my point, is you don't know. Your brain is kind of... It kind of does this thing where you don't really notice that time is missing. It kind of makes an excuse until somebody really starts pointing out holes to you like that.
I remember everything from last night. Do you remember this? No. What about this? No.
As far as you know.
Oh, I guess I do forget some of it. Yeah.
I did like that Riker got Pulaski's consent to kill her clone. I thought that was it was a big thing.
The nod.
Looked at her for
so
a nod.
There was some consent, at least at some point in this episode.
I also like that they called the clones the Walking Dead.
Huh. That is interesting.
Because they knew their species was getting ready to die out. I thought that was great. They used those specific words. And then my last note, and this is, I do think it's interesting to try to get into the mind of how a whole race of clones would develop generational thinking with different values and different ideas, such as, what they ran up to, where the clones just thought they'd hand over their genetic material, and the Enterprise clearly did not want to. And I liked that there was that different way of thinking and different perspective of thinking about things, even though I thought it was poorly executed.
No, I completely agree. As far as there was a lot of stuff that could be going on. It was a weird thing to combine those two episodes, essentially. My thought on that was that it was supposed to be part of that spectrum they were presenting. You start off with the Irish colonists coming up to the ship and having these problems with the way that these advanced people in the Enterprise were living their life, and vice versa. So then you move over to another opposite end, and cloning. What? Where are you people? No, but we're not backwards. You are. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And also, it's fascinating in the sense of if I guess they originate from the same point, right? I mean, that's just such a fun nature versus nurture kind of thing. Here's this one.
Mm-hmm.
This is where these people ended up because of that.
I mean, if our country split right now, if the Republicans and the Democrats both left this planet and colonized different planets,
oh my God,
I think they'd end up very different in a few decades.
Yeah.
That comes to one of my notes, one of my question notes. No questions. Is this a Catholic Protestant thing?
Huh.
Maybe a little.
Yeah, because that's me stereotyping the Irish situation of two different groups. Well, one side's got to be Catholic and one side's got to be Protestant. But I to be fair and honest, I couldn't find the actual parallels. But it was a natural thing to go to. But then I couldn't find. Oh well, these guys are the Catholics and these are Protestants because of this or that or that. But I thought it was interesting they took the cells out of the stomach because they're best for cloning. And I know you guys probably know why that is.
I don't.
It's because I eat. Therefore, I relate to
Oh my
eating.
God.
So that's the most base thing. We have to eat. Remember the Raleigh's commercial? You want to live, you got to eat. That's exactly what this is about. So it kind of goes. My final note is I've never been a bigger fan of the Romulans after watching these two groups.
Why do you say that?
Because they both drove me crazy.
We should do fashion.
Fashion.
Brenna looked great at everything.
Yep. She could be in a rucksack and I'm screwing up the quote. I just read this quote. Like, she could be in a rucksack in this and she'd look great. But yeah.
No, I love the crochet halter. I love the sandals.
Yep.
That's actually to go back to the perv part of the podcast, for that scene alone, I can't believe she wasn't in everything after this. But yeah, she was like, I already had her as like 2 minutes in, just the first line she said, I'm like, yep, she's my crush. Spoiler alert. But even before all the other business. So
me too.
He was just winning, and just like last episode, it's another person we're never going to see again on here, and it's a bummer.
But yeah, it is very strange that she didn't get cast. And I mean, and who knows? Who knows how things work? But yeah,
right. And maybe she's in a bunch of in England. They're like, oh yeah, she's in all this stuff, and over here we're like, oh yeah, she's in this thing in England that we don't know as well. But
right.
IMDb would list the English credits though.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's why I just thought most of them were English credits, but you're right. I did read at some point she just retired, and I think at some point she was like, I'm going to focus on my family. And then I think she just kind of did that.
That's possible.
But she's still doing voice work though now, right? That's current.
Well, that's something else I was going to note is that we have this sort of picture of what success is supposed to be as an actor.
Right.
So it's like you get to this point, if you're not going to here after that, you're a failure, or you're what's wrong? Something must have happened. But people can just do something else.
And to put it in a positive spin, I think we're all saying I would have watched her in anything, and why am I not going to get to? So I think we're saying it in a very positive sense, but I agree with you, Keith. It's the thing of only 44 IMDb credits. They were a failure.
Yeah, I mean, to tie it back to the fashion sense, the crop top seemed very 1960s Star Trek.
Yeah, I had the same thought. I had the same exact thought. Yep.
Similar to how the episode itself was a little 1960s.
Yep. And to go back to those musical flourishes I mentioned, I feel like that was very much, like I said, I felt like it was a nod, and for the most part, I think they did a better job with it than most of the 60s episodes. The boring storyline in this one, or not the boring, but the one I feel like we liked less was the one that was like, oh, it's the end of our planet kind of a thing, which was always the case in the older. I mean, again, piece of action was just fun, but yeah, a lot of the other ones like this is this planet. It's like so that was my last. Oh, sorry.
So I liked all of the Irish people's costumes. The clone costumes sucked, but that made sense because they sucked.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. I completely agree.
Alternate episode?
I had two. One was the video for Cotton Eye Joe. The other one was a ship that left Earth in 1923 from Dublin, Ireland, because I felt like those guys wouldn't have looked any different. So it's kind of like what was the Andy Griffith series? Was it Salvage? Was that the 70s Andy Griffith series where the junkyard guy built a ship out of junk and flew it into space? I want to just be set in 23 in Ireland, and these people they're Irish fucking everything. They build a ship and they take off, and they just want to go to the moon or Mars, and they end up going to another part of the galaxy, and they start over there. Actually, we should probably keep this between us, and we can sell this to Disney.
My alternate episode is Brenna and I got married, settled down, raised a family.
That's good too.
Oh, I didn't mention the John DeVries played the head of the clone people, and probably a bunch of other parts in the clones. He shares my birthday
looked really familiar.
that year, and he's best known for American Gangster, Kill Your Darlings. He's still very active. And the episode was directed by Winrich Kolbe, who is best known as a director of The Next Generation, though he also was a director of the 70s Battlestar Galactica and 24, and he will direct an episode of Enterprise, 18 episodes of Voyager, 13 of Deep Space Nine, and 16 of Next Gen, including the series finale, so we've talked about him before. This is his third episode he's directed. So I thought he did better than the last guy. I didn't really care for the directing last week, but... Leslie, he was credit only, so he doesn't get ranked in his annoyance factor. Who was your annoying character of the week?
Mine's Riker. He gets all my guff for this episode.
Why?
I didn't like his clone stance. I didn't like his. It was just too aggressive, and I just thought he should be more enlightened and open to, as Spock would say, possibilities. So yeah, I was not happy with him.
Okay.
Maybe Kirk would have gone that route, but I don't think it would have. And I'm going to say that. I was the Kirk apologist for this podcast. Kirk wouldn't have done that.
Keith, who was your annoyance?
Steve made a very good argument for that, actually. I'm not sure. I'm going to go with the lead cloner in this case, though.
The Prime Minister of Clones?
Yeah.
He was annoying.
I mean, I want to say the writer of this episode, but I don't feel that's fair game. I don't feel like that's fair game, so I guess I will go with all the clones because they were all annoying, and I was
even the
not annoyed by
quadruplets,
any of the Enterprise people or any of the Irish people. All the clones, especially Boba Fett. Crush.
Well, he wasn't the anyway.
Well, Boba Fett was the special clone.
Oh no, that's right. Yeah, I was thinking Django for a second there.
Django was everybody else, but Boba was
Django Unchained.
Yeah. That's exactly why he was called Django.
Crush of Star Trek. I think Keith is going to go with one of the clones. I know who Steven's going with. Yeah,
and I love the quadruplets. So are they quadruplets if they're clones, or they're just clones?
Well, they theorize, whoa, triplets. No, wait, quadruplets. Oh, wait a minute. No, they're shenanigans. So clones.
Yeah.
How many makes a shenanigan? Is that
6?
8 of them? Okay.
Either 6 or 9. It depends.
That's an official Irish term. Yeah, the shenanigan involves exactly that number.
So Steven and I are going to duke it out over Brenna or Cher, whatever she prefers. Yeah. And Keith.
I mean, I was actually tempted again this time, but yeah, I'm still. I mean, nothing really beats a Vulcan. So.
Man, this is like merged Headford all over.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I love Sylar, and she was my crush for 2 weeks, but I think Brenna's got a good chance of winning the season for me, honestly. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm real curious to see how that goes.
Ranking the episode. This one's tough because I hated the second half so much, and I love the first half so much. Like, if we could just rank the first half, I'd be putting it in the top 3 or 4 for sure. Just the Irish stuff and the Worf Pulaski plot, I would be like, put it up there with A Matter of Honor and Elementary Dear Data. Maybe not Man, but up there. I would. But then you add the clone stuff in, and the clone taken by itself, I'd be like, put it down there with Times Squared and Where Silence is Least at the very bottom. So the extremes of this episode just boggle me. I guess we start in the middle. Right now, we're sitting, our middle's around the Samaritan snare from last week. Better or worse than last week?
I feel like I don't know. It feels comparable, doesn't it? It's just, I don't know what it is.
I feel like we're already in the range. Yeah,
it is that half and half of an episode thing. It is also. I feel like this one's already better. I think the highs in this were higher. I think even the clone thing was higher. It's just that we were engaged in a way where we were upset about what they were doing with it, I guess.
I think you're right, and I just want to drop in something here. So 3 of the Mariposan clones in this episode were actual triplets.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
That's not surprising.
I'm trying to find the girl that was the quadruplets, and she's not listed. I think she was an unknown performer. But that said, yeah, I think you're right. I'm with you, Keith. I think I would go above the Samaritan Snare.
Yeah.
I am in agreement. I agree basically because of what Keith said. The highs were higher, and while I think they totally mishandled the clone stuff, at least there were some interesting thoughts there.
Yep.
Right above that, though, here we go, the Royale. I'm going to vote for below, but that's just me.
Interesting.
I was going to go above.
Oh man, I would.
I think I'm definitely looking at the highs, but yeah.
My first impulse was to go higher. Honestly.
Okay. Well, above that is the Icarus factor with Riker's dad.
Nope. I think it's probably below that, but
I think that's a good settling place for it.
Okay, I would have only had it one lower below the Royale, so I only lost one spot.
I definitely don't feel a strong like it has to be higher, but
right.
But yeah, so it's kind of in the middle, right?
It's in the middle, and it just frustrates me when there's such good parts and such bad parts all together. It makes it really hard to rank, in my opinion. I mean, the Royale is certainly a lot more consistent and enjoyable overall, but I would agree that the beginning half of this episode was better than the Royale. So, I mean, the beginning half of this episode was better than the next 5 episodes of the latter. So, yeah, we'll put it here. It's sitting at number 8 for the season out of 18. So just a little over halfway.
And Jimmy, you probably could have been okay with just doing the one side of the episode.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have held up for an hour?
I think so. I mean, based on how high quality it was in the first half, just add another couple Worf Pulaski scenes and add some more romance between Riker and Brenna, and I think you've got a...
Yeah, I think you might be... I was going to say, if throw Britta in more scenes, and yeah, that the Worf thing would have been probably a more interesting... Like, I think the Clone one raised great ideas and stuff, but I felt like they just ruined them. It's like, like I said, just... Did anybody involved in this episode do Android? Did they just see Blade Runner? I mean, it just came out.
Next week, we're going to throw a wrench at you. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. We're there. We've reached it. And we're doing this because Star Trek V was released between the airings of these 2 episodes. We're doing it in actual release order. So we're not just being... jerks and sticking a movie in the middle of the season. This is when Star Trek V came out. And I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
It's my least favorite of the original series movies. Well, I don't know, maybe 3. 5 has some really good parts. Anyway, not the worst Star Trek movie overall, but probably my least or second least favorite of these first 6. But still, I'm excited to get back to Kirk.
I was going to say, nonetheless, I'm excited.
And Uhura's dancing scene. For that alone, I'm sure Steven...
Yep, done.
I'm not going to give the synopsis. Just know Captain Kirk meets God in the center of the galaxy.
That's right.
And if you're wondering what does God need with a starship?
My favorite quote ever, obviously.
It's a great quote. It's a wonderful quote. We're going to find that out. So tune in next week. It'll probably be an extra long episode. We're certainly giving it more recording time, and we'll cover Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Oh, until then, live long.
And prosper.
And clone if you can't.
I'm going to Ireland. It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?